Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mercules. I'm here today with Planet Destiny, bringing you the exotic review of the sidearm Trespasser, which is one of the new weapons added in with Rise of Iron. It is very similar to the Dreg's Promise in that it fires a burst of shots instead of being semi-auto, but it actually fixes a lot of the issues that Dreg's Promise had that made it really unpopular. For example, the weapon is hit scan, which means that the bullets do not have travel time. You fire and within the same frame, it just automatically hits the target as long as you are aiming at it. For comparison, the Vestian Dynasty or the Dreg's Promise, if you fire at a target that's a long way away, you'll actually have to wait a couple of seconds before you see the damage impact and you see the little tick that says you hit the target. And what that means is that people can actually move out of the way of your bullet in the time that it takes for the bullet to travel to the target. So being hit scan is a very, very good thing for this new sidearm, especially in the Crucible. On top of that, it actually does enough damage to where it can kill in 2 bursts flat. One of the problems with Dreg's Promise is that the time to kill was very, very slow because it took more than 2 bursts to kill a target, a full armor Guardian in the Crucible. So what ended up happening is you'd have a burst delay, a burst, and then another burst delay, and then a couple shots. With the Trespasser, it's actually just 1 burst, a burst delay, and then a burst. And if you hit 4 critical hits and 2 body shots, you'll actually be able to kill the target. Anyone up to 208 HP, which I believe is 11 armor. It does 38 damage per crit shot and 28 damage per body shot, just so you guys know. The exotic perk is interesting. It actually allows the weapon to fire 1 extended burst after you reload for a kill. And that can take down a full armor Guardian in an incredibly fast 0.33 seconds. It's only 10 frames, so a third of a second. What the perk actually does is it basically just removes the burst delay from in between the first and second burst and then fires them all at once consecutively. That can be a good thing and a bad thing. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we get into the PvP aspect of the gun. As far as perks go, you're definitely going to want to choose Sure Shot IS as the sight because the only drawback this gun has, as far as its stats go, is that it has below average aim assist for a sidearm. And Sure Shot IS gives you a slight boost to aim assist, about 5. So you're definitely going to want to do that and make up for the gun's one flaw. In column 2, Relentless Tracker is the only option you have. It's not the best perk out there. It's decent. It helps to improve your situational awareness, in the height of battle, but it's not exactly the most useful thing ever. But, it could be worse. In the third column, you have the choice between hand-loaded, reinforced barrel, and quick draw. I was testing the weapon, and I found that the differences in damage drop-off between the 3 perks equated to basically just a couple meters. With quick draw, which means its absolute base range, the damage drop-off starts at about 10 meters. With hand loaded, it starts at 11 meters, and with reinforced barrel, it starts at 12 meters. So really, there's not much difference there. But what I found was that the stability is drastically decreased, almost cut in half when you use reinforced barrel. And it doesn't have, tremendous. It's got good stability for a sidearm, but sidearms in general don't have great stability. So you don't really want to be hurting that if you can help it. So I would avoid reinforced barrel. So it leaves you the choice between hand-loaded and quick draw. And because of the way this gun plays, where it's used to negate shotgun rushers, but also it has some of the bonuses of being able to still do damage outside of shotgun range, I started running hand-loaded on mine. I just felt like it helped a lot more to push the damage fall-off out by even 1 meter than it did for me to have fast equip speed and ADS, which this gun really doesn't need because it's already very, very quick. But it's really up to you. You can decide whether you want the extra meter before damage fall-off starts or whether you want the quick ready and ADS speed. The final slot is the exotic perk. It's called Unrepentant. Basically, as I explained before, after you get a kill, you have basically 3 seconds to reload. And then once you've reloaded, you have 5 seconds, a 5-second timer in which you can fire 1 super burst. The super burst does not do any more damage. It's just 2 normal bursts basically squished together. But like I said, any Guardian up to 11 armor will be killed if you land at least 4 crits and 2 body shots from that burst. If you land 5 crits and 1 body shot, then you will kill any Guardian in the game, including a Warlock wearing the Ram. So this is really, really useful. But in PvP, I actually found it was both very useful and kind of a hazard to my own gameplay. What I'm saying by that is it's high risk, high reward, but we'll talk about that more in a minute. In PvP, basically this gun is an answer to the constant threat of aggressive shotgun rushers. Because its optimal range is slightly longer than the one-hit kill range of even the most powerful party crasher Matador, it's used to basically kill shotgunners while they're charging you before they can get within their optimal range. It's very similar to something like the Lord of Wolves in that. Unlike the Lord of Wolves, the bullets don't completely disappear once the range limit has been reached, and instead they suffer normal, if very aggressive, drop-off just like all sidearms. What this does is it basically trades a slower optimal time to kill, which is 0.53 seconds, for the ability to continue doing damage once drop-off starts. For comparison, the Lord of Wolves optimal time to kill is, I believe, 1/5 of a second, 0.20 seconds. So it's slower than the Lord of Wolves to kill at, just outside of shotgun range, but the bullets don't just disappear. They continue doing damage outside of shotgun range, which is something that's pretty useful. I found that I was able to go toe-to-toe with primary weapons because it does have a very fast time to kill. Compared to primaries, it's similar to the last word in the optimal time to kill. Outside of shotgun range, I could compete with primaries, but the window was very, very small before the damage drop-off started being very, very aggressive and basically neutering the gun a little bit. So I found that it wasn't really the best strategy to use it outside of shotgun range, at least not far outside of shotgun range. So I started pairing it with a scout rifle or a pulse rifle, something that can cover those longer ranges well and avoid having to use the Trespasser and something that doesn't excel at. Basically, the weapon's purpose seems predicated on its ability to function as a shotgun deterrent for when players are charging directly at you. But the lack of aim assist and extended recoil of the burst can make it pretty difficult to track players who sidestep, strafe, or basically otherwise make attempts to get out of the way of the shots. But any player who can avoid them is going to be just disintegrated very, very quickly. As I said about the exotic perk before, it's high risk, high reward. If you land all the shots from the burst correctly, it'll kill guardians and you won't even have to fire a second burst, which is something that's amazing. It's really, really satisfying to kill someone doing that. However, if you miss that super burst, say you miss the very first shot of the super burst and some guy ducks behind a corner, you now are stuck firing all of the last rounds of that super burst. So you're stuck for an entire third of a second firing all the last rounds of that super burst. Then on top of that, you have the burst delay, then you can fire another burst. So you end up getting stuck for between, it's almost 2/3 of a second that you are just stuck wasting the rest of the rounds of this burst and then waiting to fire the next one, which is really, really bad if you're inaccurate with that super burst. So you need to be on target when you pull the trigger for the super burst, but the problem is you only have 5 seconds. It doesn't really leave you a lot of time to find the optimal super burst, basically. So long story short, if you miss that super burst or you're inaccurate with it, the gun is not going to be a great weapon to use. So good players who are able to take advantage of that exotic perk will do very, very well for this weapon, but players who maybe struggle with aim might want to avoid it for right now. All in all, it's definitely an interesting gun to use in the Crucible, but it's probably not something that's going to change the meta. As far as PvE goes, it can be described pretty simply. It's not the best and it's not the worst. The exotic perk activates quite often, but it doesn't really seem to be outstanding in most situations outside of anything that has arc shields or arc burn. It just doesn't have enough oomph or stopping power to make it worth using the exotic slot. And sidearms in general just aren't really the best weapons in the PvE part of the game because you usually want to use your special to be putting massive damage on bosses or quickly taking down majors. And this is really more of just a PvP focused gun. So basically the too long didn't read or too long didn't listen in this case. The good, it's a really great counter for aggressive shotgun play. The exotic perk is incredibly satisfying to use well. It's got a really fast optimal time to kill and it's hit scan, which allows you to compete with primary weapons at close range and sometimes even a little bit outside of that. The bad is that the exotic perk is high risk, high reward, and using it poorly basically means you're going to die. It has below average aim assist, extended recoil from the burst, and really aggressive damage drop off, which make it less than optimal compared to a lot of other weapons. And in conclusion, if you're looking for a gun that combines the ability to kill quickly at close range with the possibility of still going up against primary weapons outside of that, the Trespasser is definitely that type of gun. It's not necessarily the best exotic special to use as a straight shotgun counter, but the fact that it can be used outside of point blank range makes it kind of similar to the last word in the special slot, but with much worse damage fall off. So what you end up with is a weapon that's a healthy mix of two playstyles, but isn't really the best at either. Something like the Lord of Wolves is probably going to be better at close range shotgun countering than the Trespasser, and at mid range, something like Plan C is probably going to be better. But if you want a nice combination of the two, then the Trespasser is definitely, that's exactly what it is. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and remember to like, favorite, and subscribe for more.